Hey, this is Dr. Drew, and you are listening to the Fascination Street podcast.
Yeah, AV in your ears. That's Ambush V giving you this audio visual down the most interesting street in the world with my boy Steve. Fascination Street, you already know. Let's get it when you whip in the Fascination Street. What do you?
Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with comedian Jeff Leach. I say comedian because that's what we mostly talk about, but he is a voiceover artist for television, film, animation, video games. For a period of time, he was Ghost in the Call of Duty franchise. In this episode, we talk about him becoming a sober person and why he did that, some of the tragic losses that he had recently, which have affected his current outlook on life, some of the things that he's trying to do to be more beneficial to humanity, basically. We also talk about his new podcast called Cougar Convo. It's a podcast on YouTube featuring him and his best friend, and I'll let him tell you all about that in the episode. He also has a YouTube channel called An Evolution of Man, which we talk about. I'm not going to spoil that because it sounds super dope. And we talk about his YouTube comedy special, which is called Jeff Leach Presents a Comedy Spectacular. It is for free on YouTube. I enjoyed the hell out of it. There's stand-up bits. There's an animated bit. There's rap. There's a dance party. When he says spectacular, he's not wrong. This has a little bit of everything. Check it out on YouTube for free. Special thanks to mutual friend and two-time previous guest of the show, Lori Fetrick, a.k.a. Ice from the American Gladiator series. Thanks so much, Lori. I appreciate you making this happen for me. And this is my conversation with comedian and humanitarian Jeff Leach.
Prepare to be fascinated. Prepare to be fascinated. Prepare to be fascinated.
Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Jeff Leach. How you doing today, man?
Hello, mate. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on.
100% my pleasure. Streetwalkers, Jeff first came on my radar due to a two-time previous guest of the show and mutual friend, Lori Fetrick, Ice from American Gladiators. She was telling me that you were, pretty much the funniest and most good time person at the Adam Carolla Christmas party. So naturally, I had to check you out. I did watch your stand-up spectacular, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. My pleasure. We'll talk about that later. But first, man, where did you grow up? Where were you born and raised?
First of all, shout out to Laurie. I appreciate her being so kind about me. The feeling is very mutual. I thought her and her partner were two of the most charming people there, and I had a lovely time with them. But yes, I am originally from London, East End boy, born and bred. My dad is a proper Cockney, born under the sound of the Bow Bells. And my mum is a little further afield. She's from Romania by birth, but Macedonia by bloodline. So I guess I'm half Macedonian, half British, 100% clown.
100% clown.
Yeah.
That's got to be a pretty interesting growing up in a Cockney Romanian household. Were they together for
a Cockney and a communist? I mean, it's like, it is what it is. It's a great setting for a sitcom potentially. But yes, no, they were both very hardworking people, very working class upbringing. And I think that gave me a wonderful foundation to understand the importance of hard work and grafting for everything you want to try and build for yourself from a young age, certainly.
Sure. How about smoking? Did it teach you to smoke at a young age?
No. I learned to smoke weed at a young age.
I mean cigarettes. Don't they just hand out packs of cigarettes when you're born to Romanian people?
In Romania, yeah, no, you are correct. Everyone in Romania smokes pretty much. Although that is changing recently. I think I've seen a slight shift in that now amongst a lot of my friends out there, because I generally go out there once a year and hang out with some friends there. But yes, I'm just noticing how disgusting my t-shirt is, but this is not video anyway, is it? So it's okay.
Yeah, just make sure you bring it up though.
I'm covered in what I think is probably dog snot from a little cuddle I had this morning with my pooch.
Cool. Oh, that's rad.
But yeah, no, I did smoke, but not because of my Romanian family, just a desire to rebel. And I actually smoked weed before I smoked cigarettes. So I had some older friends who decided to let me try one of their joints when I was age 11. And I whiteyed very hard. I had, there was other stains on my shirt that day, but mostly just vomit.
Hilarious. You must have really ingested a lot of weed if it made you throw up.
Yeah. I mean, they told me that the best way to smoke it was, you have to breathe everything out of your lungs, all the air, and then you have to take a big breath into your mouth, and then you open your mouth and then breathe it in again. So I tried to show off in front of these friends who were 4 or 5 years older than me. I was 11, they were 16. And yeah, I ended up coughing, spluttering, and then throwing up. But I felt pretty good afterwards.
I love that.
Yeah.
I bet you did feel really good afterwards.
Very relaxed. Yeah.
Okay, well, you have numerous previous professions. You were a radio DJ. You were an actual DJ. You were a presenter, as we call them over there where you were. Actor. Now a comedian. Like, hey, bro, keep a job. So,
well, I actually have kept all those jobs. That's the irony. I consider myself an entertainer. I work in entertainment. So I'm an actor and a comedian who's worked in a multitude of different facets, whether it's radio shows on commercial stations or podcast hosting or award show hosting or writing scripts for TV, film, and online content, whether it's live streaming video games that I've also voiced characters in AAA video games. I'm a creative person who likes to tell stories, and I think there's a multitude of different mediums in which to do that. And I've enjoyed exploring every single one of those avenues. And one thing has always led on to the next. DJing, that's the only thing I've kind of left behind, really, was the DJing and producing. I used to do remixes for Ministry of Sound and Island Records and play all over Europe in Paris, Barcelona, and London. I had residencies. I stopped doing that when I realized I was probably going to end up dead if I continued performing as a DJ and all of the things that came with that. Ideally, lots of drinking and drug taking. So I gave all that business up when I went into TV hosting for the BBC, actually.
Now, did you give all that up because you felt like it was going to mess up your career?
No, I gave it up because I thought I was going to die. I mean, I'm an alcoholic. I'm 4.5 years sober now from booze, and I don't touch Class A's anymore. The only thing I do these days is the occasional psilocybin therapeutic treatment. Go out to the woods, drive out to Big Bear or Yosemite and take a load of mushrooms and kiss the balls of God. And become one with a state of pure nirvana and understands that I am nothing but a tiny piece of dust in an endless sea of dust that is the cosmos, which has been very healing for me.
It has been healing for you to understand that you're
not the protagonist of the story. Yeah. I think if you have enough ego deaths, which often, if you're doing therapy alongside it, which I do, often psilocybin treatments, not for everyone, but for a lot of people, can be a very freeing experience because you really disassociate from your ego. The more that I realize I am not my ego, nor am I this physical vessel in which I'm traveling from A to B, from birth to death. Yeah, that's been freeing, man. And also, I think for entertainers especially, where so much of the career in the industry is built around desperation of ego and a desire to be noticed or given adulation for your various talents and abilities, it's good to remind yourself that you're not that fucking important, really. Excuse my language. We're really not. We are all everything and we're all nothing. That's what I've understood. So instead of worrying about every little decision I make and how important it is to my day-to-day life, I try and live a little bit more presently these days just by being my best version of myself and creating the best work I can in whatever I'm doing.
I think Carl Sagan said it decades ago. I think he said, all of us are stardust. Like, we're just nothing. We're going to jump around a bit.
Sure.
You mentioned the ego death a couple of times, and I feel like that is the primary focus of your spectacular, which is called Jeff Leach's...
Jeff Leach Presents a Comedy Spectacular, yeah, because it's not a special, it's a spectacular. It's not just a 1 hour piece of written stand-up material. There is 25 minutes of written stand-up material in there shot at the Comedy Cellar in New York City, which is my home club and probably the most famous comedy club in America right now. And then there's 15 minutes of crowd work shot at the Comedy Center in Las Vegas. There's an animated segment where I play all 4 characters and, obviously scripted and directed and produced the entire thing. There's a rap music video all about being able to achieve anything in a very ridiculous way. Almost feels like a bit of an SNL skit. There's a dramatic comedy dialogue, a dramedy dialogue that runs all the way throughout the piece. So rather than call it a special and put it amongst the same box as the identikit things that we might see on a lot of the platforms that most regularly host comedy content at this point, like Netflix or Showtime or HBO or Comedy Central, I wanted to set myself apart a little bit. So that's why it's a comedy spectacular.
Now, the ego death, you mentioned a couple of times, and that basically in the spectacular, it plays out between, I don't know, sort of a good and, well, it's you and your ego, right?
It's me and my ego, yeah. So I play both characters.
Why did you decide to present an ego death? That seems pretty deep for a comedy spectacular. How'd that come about? Why?
I mean, I'm an actor. That is really what I started out doing. And
Not if you get rid of your ego, you're not.
I think the best actors have removed their ego, which is why they are able to play other characters so well, because they're not too caught up in their own identity. But yeah, I think it was important for me to showcase all of my talents, including my acting talent and my writing talent in piece that I released. And also, I just didn't want to make something that had been seen a million times before. You know, I wanted it to be unique because I feel that I'm quite unique in my industry. I wanted it to be transparent. So if you watch the spectacular, you'll see it's, I'm not bigging myself up in it. It's really highlighting the ugliest parts of myself and things that I've had to learn about myself over the years that I've been not just in entertainment, but on this planet. And also a bunch of really serious things happened over the last year and a half prior to releasing it. You know, my best friend committed suicide, and then 3 weeks later, my dad died from his alcoholism. Nothing will kick you in the dick and make you aware of the fragility of your own life than losing the two men that you love most in the world back to back in the space of 3 weeks. So for me, that made me look at myself and say, what kind of a person do I want to be? What kind of a creator do I want to be? How do I want to make art? Because I do think that stand-up comedy is art. Even if it's a set of great dick jokes, it can still be artistic. It can still have a subconscious depth to the material, you know, and a lot of the stuff that is in that spectacular does that. You know, I'll make fun of my my aging bladder due to ketamine overuse in my 20s. I'll make fun of my sexual dalliances with various unhinged people over the course of my life. I'll make jokes about drug taking and rock and roll adventures. But I hope that throughout all of those things, there is a subconscious, empathetic through line that allows me to connect to an audience on a deeper level. When I'm talking about aging and my bladder, I'm also revealing some personal stuff about myself that will allow other people in the audience to recognize, yeah, I'm scared of getting older too. That's really the subtext there. I'm scared of getting old. I'm scared of seeing my body degrade and falter, and I'm wondering what that means for me. Now, I'm also making, you know, jokes about the fact that when I pee now, it's like a scat jazz singer desperately trying to get through a couple of verses. The jokes are funny. They're getting people laughing, but I hope they leave from that going, yeah, man, I quite liked how that guy revealed that even though seemingly on stage, he might be a 6'4" guy who seems pretty physically fit. He's also turning 40. He realizes his body's falling apart and he's not ashamed to highlight those things. We're more alike than we are different. And I think in 2024, God, if we've seen anything the last few years, it's we've been force-fed by every media platform, especially social media platforms, but also major political denominations, religious denominations, racial denominations, gender and sexuality denominations. We're being told on a daily basis that we are more different than we are alike, which I think is bullshit. We're all humans. We all have human emotions. And if we had a little more human empathy for one another and understand that it doesn't matter if you're gay, Republican, black, white, straight, old, young, we all love cuddling the people that we care about. We all get scared of getting older. We're all a bit petrified when we have our first child. We all wish we could achieve our dreams. That unification is what the world needs a little bit more now. It's a utopian ideal. I don't think I'm going to change the world, but if I can make a handful of people feel more connected to one another because of my humor, that is the job that I was put here to do. Done.
Hold on, let me write this down. You don't think you're going to change the world?
No, but I can have impact on it. That's what I think is the job of any artist.
Absolutely. It's that starfish parable, right?
I don't know the parable. You have to explain it. Yeah.
Oh, there's two men are walking on the beach and there's like 500 starfish just washed up on the beach and they're all still alive and they're struggling. And this dude starts picking them up and chucking them in the ocean. And the other guy says, what are you doing? You can't make a difference, dude. There's so many. And he says, I made a difference to that one. And I made a difference to that one.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. I like it as well. Why did you release your spectacular on YouTube instead of going the traditional way?
Good question. Everyone, even my publicist, has said, why haven't you sold this? You could sell this so easily. I actually did have offers for it. bear in mind, this was, I released towards the end of October last year. This was at the tail end of the SAG-AFTRA strikes, and I am a SAG-AFTRA union member. I'm a union man. I believe in, power of the unions and working together and getting what we're owed. And these platforms that offered me money didn't want to give a fair wage or equal pay to the people that make all of the content that makes them billions of dollars every year. So my morals and ethics, I think, are going to be more important to me when I'm on my deathbed than how famous or successful I might have been in a mainstream sense. I've realized that fame is fleeting and means absolutely fuck all. So I wanted to release it in an honest way that made me feel good about the way I was doing it, rather than being like, oh yeah, I sold out to a platform that doesn't even want to pay us fairly. And I did it for what? $100,000? It's not worth it. Now, if they'd offered me $1 million, I'm not going to lie, I might have considered it. I might have stuck my morals and my ethics on the sideline for that one and gone, you know what? I'll release the next one for free. But also another aspect of it is I do hope that this spectacular hits for some people. I hope it makes some people feel less alone in depression or self-loathing or having a voice in their head that's telling them they're not good enough in a multitude of ways, which is what our egos do for us. I just wanted everyone to have access to it. I didn't need the money. I'd already shot it with my own money. I crowdfunded $30,000 from my amazing fan base and supporters, and then added another 70,000 or so of my own money to make it. And I reshot parts after my dad and my best friend died in that 3-week period. I actually went back and reshot 3 parts of the whole thing because it needed to be updated. And then I put some money into the marketing side of it. And I was like, I don't need their money. So let's give it away for free. And let's see if I can have, a bigger reach with an audience that can get it for $0. Maybe it was the wrong decision, but it felt good to me at the time.
Nice. Well, I think that we need to pay more attention to our feelings when we're making decisions like that. And like you said, you're not going to be on your deathbed going, man, sure could have used that extra hundy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, dude, when I'm on my deathbed, I'm not even going to be thinking about any of the art I've created. I'm going to be thinking about the first time I saw my child smile. I'm going to be thinking about my best friend who's been by my side for 40 years, who I'm so grateful that I met. I'm going to be thinking about planting flowers in the backyard with my grandkids. That's what I'm going to be thinking about. I'm not going to be thinking, God, wasn't it amazing when I released that comedy special and 300,000 people liked it? That's not going to mean anything to me.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors. Let's get back into it.
As you said, right now, roughly 300,000 people have watched this comedy spectacular on YouTube for free. And yet you spent, let's just say, $100,000 on it.
Yeah, probably a bit more than that. Yeah.
Was it worth it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Making good art's always worth it. This is what I've realized lately, and this has been a big change for me. I'm not going to deny that, like anyone else in the entertainment industry, I was very desperate for success for a long period of time. And then I realized I've had it. I've already had success in a multitude of different areas. Now, what we equate to success these days is ongoing, never-ending mainstream success where you have millions of fans. But that's fleeting for anyone. You can only sustain that for a certain period of time, and then it's gone. And you might have ups and downs within that. What I realized a few years ago when I started doing therapy and I gave up booze and I started being more transparent with myself about what I really want and what I really want to achieve is, if I have lost all the joy of creating art, then it doesn't matter how successful it is, doesn't matter what the reception of it is, I'll never enjoy that process at any point. I might as well go and work flipping burgers or, selling clothes in a store, because I could get as much joy out of making someone feel good about putting some good food in their belly or putting on a cool outfit that I've sold to them as I could creating a piece of art that took me 1.5 years to make. So I made the decision that I need to enjoy the process. And if I've enjoyed the process, it's already a success. Plus, I haven't had to have a quote unquote real job, grown up job since, I started working when I was 11 with my paper route, and I've been employed since 11 until today. I've never been fired from a job. And I started in entertainment when I was at college. I started doing commercial radio when I was still studying at college. So for 2 decades, I haven't had to earn money in anything other than entertainment. And I think that in itself is success. And the more that I realize that, the more that I'm happy in doing what I do, rather than worrying about how it's going to be received, or whether the right exec producer will see it, or whether an agent's going to like it, or whether it's going to get 1 million likes. None of that stuff should matter. You should just enjoy making the art.
I think that it's a huge win and a definite barometer of success if you can pay your bills and support yourself and your family with something that you love to do, whether it's art
Absolutely.
or, I mean, even if it's mowing lawns, whatever it is, if it's your passion, if it's your love, and you can sustain yourself and pay all your bills, that's a success in my book.
My most fulfilling job has not been entertainment. My most fulfilling job was when I was a younger man. I was a physical education teacher, and I used to teach soccer to kids. And that for me was still to this day is what I think about when I think of my favorite job.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you about that. I've heard you say that you felt like that time period was your most giving and introspectively lucrative point in your life. What in your life makes you feel the way you did when you coached kids in soccer in New Zealand? What in your life right now gives you that feeling?
Oh, so right now it's all the work I'm doing with children's and veterans charities. So this year is a big focus on making more content that is of service. So I have a new channel called An Evolution of Man. And a lot of that content is centered around physical, mental, and spiritual evolution, not just for men, for women as well, but, for humans. All of the best things that have happened to me in the last few years have always been outside of myself. It's not been, oh, cool, I booked that TV show, or, oh, great, I booked that video game. It's been, oh, I got to fly out and host this show for a bunch of kids in gaming and connect them with veterans who served in the same squad as their parents who unfortunately lost their lives in the line of duty.
Gold Star
Gamers, yeah. So Gold Star Gamers is a charity that I'm an ambassador of. There's a bunch of other things like that. And being of service to other people, and this is a big part of the AA mindset as well, since I gave up drinking. Once you start AA, you realize that the way to create personal strength is to be strong for other people. A lot of people stay sober by helping others stay sober. I don't struggle with wanting to drink anymore. In fact, it's not even something that comes into my mind at this stage. But I do know that every time I'm of service to someone, I feel amazing. I feel amazing. It feels amazing to help other people. It feels good. It's self-serving, absolutely. But it also, that you've given some time to service of others and taking yourself outside of your own mind for that period of time, whether it's something small like giving up a few hours to host something that's going to help raise some money for a charity, or a little bit more involved, like I'm planning a bunch of free comedy shows for the US vets in Las Vegas, Veterans Social Club. I've started doing stuff with them, Warrior Transition Outdoors. We're doing a couple of projects over the year. Altia Health, who provide healthcare for PTSD and trauma victims, especially vets and children at risk. Those kind of projects, I mean, it feels good. It feels good to do those things. It feels great to do those things because you get to see a very real, a visceral kind of product of the work you've done. In the same way, actually, teaching kids soccer does. When I see kids progressing and having more self-confidence, that feels amazing. In the same way, my other favorite job I've ever had was I was a painter and decorator as a summer job every year from the age of 13 until I was 18. And I used to work through my summers instead of, being out with my mates drinking in parks. Well, I did a bit of that. But I used to go to work every day and I earned money. I earned 50 quid a day. And it felt amazing because at the end of the day, you look at that house that you've painted and you see the joy on the owners' faces. And they're like, you've done a really good job. Thank you, mate. That's great. Here's your money. Boom. There's a sense of achievement for a good, hard day's graft. And I think if you're putting that graft into helping other people lift themselves out of depression, anxiety, trauma, PTSD, a lack of self-belief, I don't know. It's been beneficial for me. Every single person who's helped me to do that, like my therapist or friends who've elevated me when I literally wanted to die and wanted to kill myself, which I had a very weak attempt at doing so. I think it was more of a call for help than an actual attempt. And then around the time my friend and my dad died, I definitely held a loaded gun against my own head. And, fortunately thought about all the people that would affect outside of myself and realized that, I've been blessed with a few gifts. And wasting those and not using them to go and spread a bit of positivity would be a waste of a life that it really is a blessing, to me. Anyway, I think that's I'm saying roundabout way. You give to other people, you see a very tangible, immediate benefit for those people. And it makes you feel more worthwhile being here, you know?
I do. My wife is and has been a psychiatric nurse working in and building mental health hospitals and substance abuse hospitals for years. So I understand what you're saying right there with you. You know, watching somebody develop, learn, grow, evolve, all of that is, its own reward. Was that the turning point? You know, you lost your best friend and your dad, and then you had a gun to your head, but then you thought about all of because I mean, you were going through it. That's why you had a gun to your head, is because you were going through.
I just didn't really want to be here anymore. I was in too much pain, man. I couldn't.
Right. The pain of the loss of those two. So was it thinking about the pain that you would leave other people with? Is that what kept you from doing it?
Certainly a little bit. I thought about my sister and I thought about my niece and I thought about my mum, and, I didn't want to leave them with that. But also not entirely, because the way that I see creation and existence, we're all part of the same energy. So I don't necessarily see it as black and white like that. Like, oh, once I'm gone, they're going to be in this pain. I don't think time exists in that linear fashion anyway. Once we're gone from this particular experience that life is. I also just thought more about, I've stuck it out for almost 40 years. Why would I give up at this point? Like, I really have a chance to make an impact. If I'm going to kill myself, I should at least do myself the service of seeing if I have a chance of being free of depression first. Because I put in so much work already. How much more work will it take to get to that place? And I'm very, very proud and very grateful to be able to say that after 3 decades, I think from about the age of 8 or 9 is when I first felt kind of overwhelming depression and self-loathing. And 3 decades, I was clinically depressed. And in the last year to year and a half, I haven't felt any depression. I've been completely freed from it. Now, I did actually, after the gun was against my head, I booked myself an Airbnb out in the desert, and I drove out there and I took a load of mushrooms, and I had 7 grams of mushrooms, and I did a lot of crying, man. And I did a lot of tripping internally, and I did a bit of psychonaut exploration, and I left my human body and I talked to a higher power. And I think I had probably a similar experience that, a lot of religious denominations might have when they have a connection with their God, which I see it all as the same thing. It's just one energy, that's all it is, of which we are all part. That's why I say we're all nothing. We're all dust. I like the stardust analogy, but we're all God as well. Like, God is everywhere, is in all of us. And whilst I'm not a religious man, spiritually, I feel that. I feel like that, God is that one energy that makes up everything in the cosmos. So realizing that, I'm like, oh, it's not that serious, bro. It's not that deadly serious. Yes, these people are gone. Yes, that's painful. But you can either hold on to that pain and make it your identity, or you can realize you're not the physical body you walk around in, that's your vessel to get from A to B, life, birth to death. You're not the subconscious of your body, because I don't think about how I process my bacon and egg sandwich in the morning. I had a coffee earlier on. I got no idea how I'm digesting that. I'm not aware of that subconscious. I'm certainly not the ego, because the ego that sits in my head and goes, you're ugly, you're too fat, you're not talented enough, you're not hardworking enough, no one respects you. That voice is something that I've freed myself from, because I'm not that ego. What I am is a little spark of energy sitting all the way behind that. And the sooner you can start to connect with that, the sooner you can realize, oh, I have a choice. I have a real choice in everything that I do in life. I can choose to be miserable for the rest of it, or I can choose to end it because I'm too miserable, or I can choose to free myself from that depression and start having impact in a much more widespread positive manner, which I know I'm already capable of because I've been doing it for years. I just haven't been seeing the value for myself personally as well, During the pandemic, I streamed Call of Duty every day for 2 years for anywhere between 8 to 14 hours a day, playing the game, entertaining my audience, building up a fan base of, hundreds of thousands of people on various platforms. And I talked about my alcoholism. I talked about giving up drugs. I talked about depression and trying to find ways to counter that. I talked about my therapy very, very publicly, to a point where a lot of people in the industry said, bro, this is bad news. You shouldn't talk about this stuff. It makes you less bookable by people. Oh, no producer's going to want to work with a guy that talks that openly about being an alcoholic and getting sober. Be careful, man. But I carried on doing it, because what would happen is some 11-year-old kid who watches me because he likes Ghost from Call of Duty, he would send me a message and say, hey, man, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. You'll probably not answer this message, I know, but my name's Steve. I've been depressed for years. I didn't really understand. And knowing that Ghost, even though I'm not the character, like he loves this character, saying, even knowing that some guy who I think is a notable person because he plays a character that I admire or I connect with, knowing that you go through the same shit as me makes me feel less alone. I'm going to go and talk to my parents and see if I can get a therapist. Or at the opposite end of the scale, I've had a 45-year-old bloke who was a ketamine addict I talked about, losing my friend Louise, who I have a tattoo on my arm of, who I lost to ketamine when she was very young, and talking about my own battles with drugs and moving on from that. He's now in NA. He's been sober for, the guy I'm talking about has actually been sober for a couple of years now, almost 3 years. But all of those individual stories, of which there were a multitude, I wasn't trying to do that necessarily. I wasn't necessarily trying to save someone's own personal life, because I know I don't have that power. But I think the more you share your own failings, insecurities, and how you're trying to counter them on a personal level, God, if it makes one, like you say, if one starfish gets themselves out of a shitty situation, I'm happy to be the bloke throwing them a lifeline, I'm only 39. I turn 40 in a couple of weeks' time, 3 or 4 weeks' time. And I realize that hopefully, if I look after my health, I might have another 60 years on this planet. If I've managed to have an impact on as many people as I have already at this stage, imagine what I could do free from depression and being completely transparent in everything that I do for the next 60 years. I might be able to help a bunch more people. That's worth sticking around for. So that's really what stopped me from pulling the trigger. Also, if I'm honest, I think I was scared, and I don't really think I wanted to die. I don't really want to die. I just wanted to be free from pain. I don't think most people who take their own life really want to die. They're just so overwhelmed and sick of feeling broken. And sometimes all it takes is to know that other people feel the same way, to feel less alone and to allow you to get beyond that. Your wife, I'm sure, knows this intrinsically and learns this on a daily basis.
Sure. I know you mentioned it briefly, but tell me about an evolution of man.
So the YouTube channel is youtube.com/@anevolutionofman. People are listening, they want to follow it preemptively, I would appreciate it. But basically, it's going to have 3 main strands of content: physical, development. Basically, I want to be the best version of myself by the time I die. That's what I've decided. So I am very sporty and I've done a lot of adventurous things, but I'm not in the peak of physical condition. So I'm going to be doing a bunch of physical things. That spans everything from whitewater rafting, skydiving, advanced CQB firearms courses, yoga, meditation. And I'm going to be documenting my personal journeys with all those things on the physical side. From a spiritual side, some of that yoga and meditation will come into it, but also there'll be a series with my actual therapist who has been providing me therapy for the last 3 years. He's a professor who teaches at a bunch of different colleges, written books. He and I are going to do a podcast series where we discuss different subject matters each time. It could be loss and grief, for instance, or it could be how to free yourself from the voice in your head. It could be setting healthy boundaries for yourself. And we're going to do a podcast series. I'm also visiting both veterans and other mental health advocates that I've met along the way and talking to them in a podcast series. So it could be recovered alcoholics and drug addicts. It could be psychologists and psychiatrists. It could be veteran-run charities that provide support for people with PTSD and trauma. That will be one strand of it. I'm not teaching people anything. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a leader. I don't want to be a leader. I don't want a cult. I don't want to be teaching people. I'm not one of these new age alpha males going, hey, let me teach you how to be okay in yourself, bro. What I'm basically using it is, it's an online resource for people to follow the journey of one guy who hasn't been okay over the course of his life and is learning bit by bit by bit how to be more happy and more healthy and more productive and positive for other people in his life. And if that has a knock-on effect to people and they can draw anything from it that is useful to them, that's the intention of the channel. So it's a resource. It's an online resource, really. And I imagine it will make me $0, which is absolutely fine. It's going to cost me a lot for the interim. It's my way of using my talents as an entertainer to document things that I hope can have a positive influence in people's lives.
Love it. You should get Dr. Drew on that show.
I'd love that, actually. In fact, I did, obviously, Adam Carolla and him are besties. So I'm going to talk to Adam about it at some point because I think he would be a wonderful guest. I already know Brandon Novak is going to appear on it at some point. He's on his own journey of, mental health advocacy and has been putting a lot of content out about that. I'd love to get Johnny Bernto on there as well, who's not only an incredible actor, but does a series called Real Ones, where he talks to men who have turned their lives around. There's a bunch of really interesting people. And it won't just be my voice as well. I've got a couple of other people who are involved in it. There's a veteran who runs a private security company who is now self-published and released 4 books called Zach James. He's going to be doing a series on creative writing for it. There's going to be other voices as well, is what I'm trying to say. Not just my own. It's not just about me.
Love it. Well, if Adam gets too busy, I can connect you with Dr. Drew and make that happen.
I'd love that. Yeah, I'd be very much into that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Tell me about your Cougar Convo podcast.
So this is now just for the lulz. One of my best friends is an adult superstar, an adult actress called Cherie DeVille. In fact, she's just won MILF of the Year and Performer of the Year at the XBiz and the AVN. She's actually hosting the XBiz Awards this Sunday. I just written the script for her, so I'm going to be going up there to help with that. We are genuinely besties. We play Dungeons and Dragons together on a weekly basis. We hang out socially very frequently, and we have this wonderful connection that deserved to be made into some comedy content. So we do it's a chat and comedy podcast where it's just the two of us, and we have a different jump off phrase or word each time. So far, we've done guns, the future, food, beauty, sex work, video games, and we're basically taking different jump off subject matters. We always dress thematically to whatever the content might be. We have a set design that's always themed to the subject matter. It's two best friends, irreverent and ridiculous conversations about what those words and phrases might mean to us and what we understand them to be. The first episode has just gone live on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@ComicCougarConvo. We've been dropping shorts and clips, which are racking up hundreds of thousands of views, most likely due to Cherie's unbelievable following. I mean, she has like almost 4.5 million on Instagram alone, so hopefully tapping more into her humor rather than her incredibly acrobatic sex work. Yeah, just two friends shooting the shit and having a good time. So if people enjoy irreverent comedy and want to hear what a porn actress and a recovering addict comedian want to talk about, then I think they'll enjoy that.
Should have called the show Two Beautiful Dorks, because it sounds like y'all get into some nerdy shit.
We do, yeah. Actually, listen, nerds are some of the dirtiest people out there as well. Like, do not be fooled. Just because they're hiding at home playing Dungeons and Dragons, that means they're dressing up as demons in the background and having sex with each other in fantastical ways.
It's not scary at all. Jeff, tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
So if you want to check out my stuff, at Jeff Leach, that's JEFFLEACH is my username on pretty much every platform, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. I have a YouTube channel called youtube.com/JeffLeachTV, where you can see daily comedy clips, gaming clips, podcast clips, etc. Comic Cougar Convo, if you Google that, you'll find your way to our new podcast. And An Evolution of Man is the new channel on YouTube. It will have lots of content that hopefully will be of use to a multitude of people.
Fantastic. Now, Jeff, I know we barely scratched the surface of you, but is there anything that we didn't talk about that you specifically wanted to talk about today? Did we get the good bits?
I think so, man. I think that was a nice little smorgasbord of who I am, and I appreciate you, doing your research and finding out so much about me beforehand, man. That's always nice to know that you've invested some time, so thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate the compliment. Maybe we can have you back on in 6-8 months, a year or something, and talk a little bit more about your past and the things that will have happened from now to then.
Absolutely, man. I would love that.
I wish you all the success in the world with An Evolution of Man and Comic Cougar Convo, your podcast. Dude, keep doing the Lord's work. It sounds like you're really benefiting and it's gratifying. So don't stop.
I promise I won't.
And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and your hectic creativity schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. And thank you for watching my comedy special as well, my spectacular. That meant a lot to me. I not everyone watches it through before they chat to me. So I appreciate you actually investing the time.
It's 100% my pleasure. And every part of it was hilarious and awesome, and some parts were introspective. But even the very end, like after all of the funny and after all of the serious, boom, there's still like it's like a rap or whatever. Like you did a whole nother thing.
My little outro, the song, yeah, I did the dance track and then I have the ridiculous dancing at the end. And
it's a lot of fun. Everybody go check it out. Again, Jeff Leach presents a comedy spectacular. It is on YouTube everywhere. Did I say it right?
You did. Thank you, sir.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. Have a great weekend, dude.
You too.
Peace.
Take care, brother.
Opening music is the song FSP Theme, written, performed, and provided by Ambush Vin.
Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jack's Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.